are here. Welcome to Hamityville Horror. I'm Clint. With me, of course, is Don, and we have Mo here today.
Hey, hey.
And this is a crazy day. It's also an amazing day, as we are joined by the great Catherine Mary Stewart. So I'm really kind of trying not to freak out right now, but I do want to thank you for coming. This is awesome. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you very much. I always think I sound like a nun or something when people introduce me. I'm still not used to my own name.
Oh,
Sister Catherine.
Sister Catherine Mary Stewart, or Her Royal Highness Catherine Mary Stewart.
I like it.
I guess
I like that. That sounds good. I'm surprised you haven't used that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I'll go a little bit out of sequence, because since you brought that up, Don had done some digging and found an interesting tidbit. Do you want to roll into that, Don, and ask that question?
I can. So the Apple, which phenomenal movie.
Of nuns and queens.
Right, exactly. So the director at the time took issue with your original name.
This is correct.
And you basically had to change it, so you did it with your mother's maiden name.
That's right.
Did that bother you at all? Was it something that when they told you that you were like, what are you talking about? Why is that a bad thing? Just kind of, how did that kind of transpire?
Yeah, that's so funny. At the time, everything that had to do with the Apple was so kind of this fast-paced and happened sort of out of the blue, and it was like I was auditioning as a dancer for this movie, and then the director, he pulls me out of like this group of 200 dancers and said, "Can you act?" He thought I looked right for the lead role, and within like a couple of days I had this role. And then Menachem Golan was the director, and he's got quite a reputation for being a character. And he said, and he's from Israel, so he has this very sort of, he's got a very aggressive sort of talk. And he says, his name, I don't know how to say it, because my last name was Nursall, which is sort of an unusual name. It's Nursall. It's an English name, but it's unusual. I know a few relatives but not many. It's not like Stewart as a person. But it just really confused him. It bothered him. So he said, "You have to change it." And I was like, okay. I really didn't think long and hard about it, but I thought, well, that's interesting. Okay, well, I really had no sort of long-term kind of thoughts or ideas or anything about this whole acting thing when I got the Apple. And so my mother's name is Mary Stewart. My name was Catherine Mary. And I put the three together just as a tip. I couldn't think of a name, sort of out of the blue. I don't know what it would have been. And it just sort of fell into place. And my parents were fine, and it was just this first movie that I'd done. And as far as I was concerned, I was a dancer. So it was going to be like this little thing for a couple of months. And then I'd go back to who I used to be. So it just became Catherine Mary Stewart. And that stuck, as did my acting career.
No kidding.
Well, you have what is it, Scottish and English ancestry, right? So
yeah,
that name goes right with it.
Yeah. I couldn't possibly be any white breader.
I feel you there.
Oh my gosh. If you, like, my son was doing that whole DNA, whatever, 22 or whatever you call it, the whole thing. And he's literally, and my husband has some French in him, I think, but he's basically Irish English and has a little bit of, my son's like, oh, I wonder what my DNA is from around the world, And he's like 99% white, just white from the island of Britain,
Just white from the island of whiteness.
Yep, the island of whiteness.
Could not be, yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting when you think about it. And it's also interesting that I was drawn to also somebody almost as white as me, you know.
They just stuck a pin in the cliffs of Dover right there.
That's
how
right.
white you are.
That's right. That's how white I am. For sure. Yeah. So my mother's Scottish and of Scottish descent. Her mother, let's see, how does it work? Well, I guess her mother was born in Canada, but her father immigrated from Scotland. And my grandmother on my dad's side was born in Canada, but her husband was born in England. And the names are Stewart, McDonald, Little, and Nursall. And they're all very, very white.
Well, it worked out great for you. I mean, I've always been a fan of like 3 names or whatever, you know. It sounds like fancy.
Yeah. Right. And I thought I was being so unique at the time. And actually, when I changed my name, which was like 1979, it was unique. I mean, there were very few people that had that name.
Now everyone just does.
Yeah, now everybody does. I think I think you set the trend.
Hello. I mean, you know, it's so hard being so like influential on so many people.
Well, I'm glad you didn't do anything crazy with it.
Yeah.
So, speaking of the apple, I really hope you're proud of that movie, because I feel that a lot of people like either don't understand it or think it's too weird or something like that, and I've heard people speak poorly of it, and I felt that was a little unfair because I watched it before this, and I really thought it was cool. Like, to me, I mean, it was 1980, so given a couple of musicals that came before it, it made me think that it was probably inspired a bit by Rocky Horror Picture Show and maybe even Jesus Christ Superstar.
Or something like Xanadu.
Yes.
There it is, Mo. There it is, Mo.
Mo was just
I was hoping you were going to say it.
Love Xanadu.
You know, I thought, you know, the songs were catchy, the dance numbers were cool. I mean, the casting was wonderful. It had an Adam and Eve allegory, good versus evil, you know, a message that love conquers all hippies go to heaven. It's yeah. So I enjoyed it quite a bit. But did you find it to be an enjoyable experience?
Well, again, you have to put it in sort of the perspective of where I was at the time, which was just kind of going with the flow. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. When I read the script, I'd never read a script before per se, so I didn't really know what that entailed. I thought the music was fantastic. I mean, the people who wrote and composed the music were brilliant, I thought, especially at the time. I mean, it's a little dated, it's kind of whatever, but I think the music's great. I didn't really understand the song Coming, what that was all about. I just sort of thought it was about come hither, as opposed to what was sort of more on display in terms of the dance and probably the scenario. I was very young and naive, and I was truly just sort of excited to be a part of something new. And perhaps my biggest concern was, is it legit? You know, but I ended up I ended up with an agent and all that other stuff who could look out for me, and so that the school actually that I was studying at the time, I was studying at a performing arts school in London, training as a dancer, and when they found out that I got this role, they set me up with an agent. So I had that kind of security blanket, you know, just to look out for me, because who knows where this whole thing came from. Although it was a pretty big dance audition and all that other stuff. It appeared to be, but I didn't know what I was doing. So, and then we ended up going to shooting this thing in Berlin, which was weird. And that was at a time when the wall was still up. So Berlin was kind of like this island in the middle of East Germany, which was communist. And then Berlin itself was kind of cut down the middle with the Berlin Wall, East Berlin and West Berlin,
Yeah.
and we shot in West Berlin. So it was kind of a really cool cultural experience that you
Yeah.
wouldn't get today. And we were allowed to go into East Berlin. Nobody could come out of East Berlin, which is kind of a sign that maybe something's off. But we were allowed to go in. And I went in one day with Joss Ackland, who played God basically in this thing, and the old hippie. And that it was fascinating. It was a fascinating experience. That on top of the fact that I was shooting this rock musical, everybody was terrific. I really enjoyed it. I mean, but I was young and I was just open to experience, and so I had no preconceived ideas of what might happen with it, what it might look like when it was all cut together. I mean, there was a lot of stuff edited out that I think that's one of the criticisms of the movie. It's like, so this, and this, and then that happens, to a certain degree. I mean, there was so much more shot than that actually ended up in the movie. But and then, even watching the movie, it's sort of my first movie. It was like hard to just, I don't know, critique it. I guess I'm so distracted by the fact that I'm in it that I don't know what makes a good movie. I wasn't somebody who
You make a good movie. You make a good movie.
Thank you. But you know what I mean? I wasn't like a movie critic. I don't know what a good movie is. I didn't spend a lot of time watching tons of movies. I wasn't like in my playbook. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be an actor, so I'm going to study acting and theater, and none of that. So the reaction was interesting, especially at first. It opened the Montreal Film Festival in 1980, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it may have been the first year of the Montreal Film Festival. That sort of is something that sticks in my brain, but I'm not absolutely positive about that. But the reaction there was not good. No, it was not good. And that was kind of devastating for Menachem, this was going to be like his entree into the American film market. And there was just something missing there that the audience didn't click to or something. So, but it was a great credit for me. Certainly, I was the lead in a feature film, and it wasn't a small budget at that time. It was like $5 million, which was in those days like a decent sized budget for sure. So there was a lot of hope for that movie, but it's had its second life for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's certainly got its fans, and I'd think all three of us are among them. It's
absolutely,
absolutely unique little movie there.
Unique is a good word.
No doubt.
And even like the progressiveness of having like cross dressers and almost like a transgender theme throughout it. I mean, I think it could be relevant now.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's got and as a result, it's got a huge gay following for sure. And I have tons of friends that, I mean, they will literally set up screenings and dress like the character, sort of like Rocky Horror Picture Show.
That's amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, no doubt, that's amazing.
So one more thing about that time period, then I'll get on to something more recent. But it's I noticed something about you basically picked up and moved from Edmonton, Canada, and went directly to London, England, to the dance school that you talked about. And to me, that almost seemed like a pretty fearless move. You know what I mean? Like that would be like a culture shock to most people. And I didn't know if maybe that's an indicator of a personality trait of yours. Do you consider yourself to be a fearless person?
I try to be as well. I would say fearless, but I would say I'm not afraid to be scared. I try. I don't seek it out, but if something makes me scared, I kind of lean into it a little bit, because it's boring to be safe. Having said that, in terms of London, when I was graduating from high school, I decided what I wanted to do. I didn't want to go to university. I wanted to pursue the dance thing. I'd done quite well in Edmonton. But I was in a company and we toured a lot, and it was just something I really loved. So I wanted to pursue that. So I had sort of thought, well, here are my options: Toronto, New York, which really scared me. I mean, scared me like everybody, even today, is kind of nervous about New York if they've never been there. I've lived here now for at least 25 years now. So it doesn't scare me as much. It's ironic in my mind that I live here, but it was Toronto, which seemed boring to me. London, which is somewhere I've been, I had been several times. I mean, with my family, and my family had traveled quite a bit growing up, so that wasn't completely crazy to me. It wasn't that unusual. That wasn't like delving into the unknown. It was. And my dad and my mom actually happened to be there at the time that I went. So that was another little cushion for me. My dad was doing some work at the University of London or something like that. So I had that cushion as well. Anyway, yeah, so it was very intimidating. I mean, I remember the first day of going to class, I was so scared because I mean, to the point where I could my mother had to walk me there because I was just like, oh my God, what have I done? Because it was such an unknown for me. I'd done well in dance in Canada, but this was just like a whole other thing. So it was very scary, but you know, I conquered it, and I loved it. I loved being, after my parents left, I was there by myself, and it was just a real, you know, it's interesting. You look back on your life and the things that my parents sort of encouraged and allowed us to do back then. It's a little astonishing in a way. I mean, well, I try to be as open-minded about this stuff as I can with my kids, and they've done a lot of traveling on their own as well. But if you think too much about it, especially in today's, in this time, it's like, ooh, is that safe, or will they be okay?
Oh yeah. Especially in this day and age, you never know what you're going to get.
You never know what you're going to get. And also you hear so much more. I mean, there weren't things like CNN and stuff around at the time. You didn't have such a concept of international, you know, politics and war and all that other stuff.
Right.
And so yeah, at any rate, yeah, I mean, it ended up being like one of the most, obviously because of the Apple, but as well just a pivotal time in my life, because I conquered this challenge, I guess. And I think that is a marker for most pivotal times in people's lives, when they are intimidated by something and they conquer it, and then they look back and go, that was the best time of my life.
Oh yeah, sets you up to think like, oh, I could do that, so maybe I can do this, you know. And that's it, you're
sure. And even if that's a subconscious thing, it's like a building block towards being more open to more possibility, and really going for things that you might not have done had you not done the thing before. Yeah.
Right.
Speaking of intimidation.
Yeah.
So you auditioned for roles for Death of a Centerfold and The Outsiders, and you were up against people like Jamie Lee Curtis and Diane Lane. Were you intimidated by, you know, knowing that you were up against those types of stars and those types of people? Did it ever cross your mind or anything like that?
Well, no, I mean, because partly because I didn't know that, for instance, Diane Lane was up for that role. What was intimidating about that, what was interesting, again, I have to say, being young and sort of naive and not having any preconceived ideas, and just kind of going with the flow and having fun. You know, you going into these auditions, just for instance, Jamie Lee Curtis, and I forgot that the name was Death of the Centerfold. I remember being in the room with her and recognizing her. I think she hadn't done a ton of stuff, but maybe Halloween or something. And I knew who she was. And she looked at me when I came in and she said, "You should get this role." I mean, and I was like, "Oh," and
Wow.
she was like auditioning as well. And that really, I mean, I was just like, that's the nicest thing a competing actor has ever said to me, since then or since, you know. I mean, she was just like, and it's interesting because I forget her name now, the who it's about, but she's Canadian too. She was from Vancouver, I think, and I think facially we were similar, and it was such a sweet thing for her to say, and just down to earth. And I don't really know her. I haven't met her since, but from what I do know people who do know her, and that's who she is. She's just down to earth, nice, just the most wonderful person. So that was great. For the other one, it was like Francis Ford Coppola directed that, right? He has this crazy way of auditioning people where he just has a whole bunch of people come into the room and read the scenes, and he'll literally have music setting a tone.
That's awesome.
And I remember sitting like, you know, a couple of rows of us sitting there reading the script together. I think he's like checking out chemistry or something like that. And Tom Cruise, who wasn't Tom Cruise yet. In fact, I don't know what he'd done before that, but whatever it was, I don't even think it was out yet. Whatever he'd done, maybe some small stuff. But I remember thinking, oh my God, he's so good looking. I walked out with him at the end of the audition. This is just an aside, thinking, maybe he'll ask me out. And but oh boy, no, he was just like, he was so focused on, you know, acting and getting the role. He was so not interested in me, not in a million years. And I was like, yeah, you know, hey. Anyway,
Drop the ball, Tommy boy.
Yeah.
But also I did there was something in the scene where I think it was him, had a line where I sort of took offense to, and I had a glass of water, and I took the water and I threw it at him. And if I'm not mistaken, Diane Lane, who ended up with that role, that was the role I was up for. She wasn't there that day. I think he used to bring in different groups of people, and she had that in the movie. She threw the glass of water. I said, "Wait, that's my bit."
Yeah.
You inspired them for sure.
The director said, "We need to do that."
About that, I wonder. I mean, because it was a very spontaneous. So we're just reading away, and he says something really snarky to me, and I'm like, "Bam!" I throw the water out.
That's awesome.
Good touch.
Wasn't enough to get me the job, though. So
unfortunately,
darn it. So I'd like to pause on The Last Starfighter briefly. It was a very early film, but it has had some serious longevity, and there are so many fans of that. If I asked my wife how many times she had seen that movie, I would probably get an answer in the tens, possibly over 100. I have no idea, but a lot of people are wondering, and I'm kind of wondering too, are we any closer to maybe having a sequel to that film, to where they might pull you in to reprise your character?
Well, there's been a lot of talk about it for the last few years, actually. And the last time I was in Los Angeles, I'm still really good friends with Lance Guest, who played Alex. He said, So there's been this, talk back and forth about this sequel and what's going on with it. And Jonathan Betchell, who wrote the original script, has written the sequel, which is a great sign, I think, because so many sequels can just sort of go off on, they have nothing to do with the original. And one of the things that I believe is behind the success of Last Starfighter is how sort of small, in a sense, and intimate it is. And there's nowadays, there's so much giant special effects, and it's not really about the characters or the story. It's about sort of blowing the audience away with all this special effects and violence and all that other junk.
Yeah.
And so I hope, given the fact that Jonathan is involved with it in the way that he is, hopefully it'll maintain some of that intimacy, that I think that the audience really relates to. It's they love the characters, they relate to the characters, and that's what makes it so special. So anyway, last time I was in Los Angeles, Lance said to me, what if I call up Jonathan and let's get together and see where the sequel thing is at? So we were going to have breakfast with Jonathan, and he called Lance like the morning we were supposed to meet and said, my partner was diagnosed with COVID, and I just don't know if I've been exposed, but I don't want to do that to you guys. This was in January, so it was, it probably wasn't super serious, but he just didn't want to. So we ended up, Lance and I just went for breakfast, which was great. But he sent us kind of a sizzle reel for the idea for the sequel. So I do think it's going to happen, and Lance and I would both be involved, and it would have something to do with, where we are today and how this story carries on. I'm sure the special effects will be much better, much more sophisticated.
Yeah.
At the time, they were literally creating these special effects. The Last Starfighter is known for the fact that it was kind of like ground zero of CGI. So
I heard that. Yeah.
Digital productions, they got involved, and they would create it on the spot, play it back, and if they had to fix something, they could do it on the spot, and that was brand spanking new. I actually watched Last Starfighter before this, so I watched the whole making of, and
nice.
It's funny that she makes fun of you, Mo, for being in a black and white, because she was in black and white in that interview, so that's hilarious. But no, it was for what it was, absolutely revolutionary. I mean, it just reminded me of like Tron, like how groundbreaking that was, and it was awesome.
Yeah, it still holds up pretty well, I think. I'm always surprised by how good it still looks when I watch The Last Starfighter. It's they did a good job on it. I think that this
really sharp on Blu-ray.
If we don't get like a feature-length theatrically released sequel, it would be really cool. I think Last Starfighter could support like a sort of limited mini series on Netflix or something, kind of like Cobra Kai. That would be
yeah. Wouldn't that be neat?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that'd be so much fun. Yeah, that could be my golden years. I can be like the mom in The Last Starfighter. I'd love it.
Yes, this needs to happen.
Yeah. Well, something's going to happen probably eventually. Hopefully not too long, because then we'll have to be the grandparents of The Last Starfighter or something like that.
So I wanted to ask you, obviously there's a lot of fans of Last Starfighter, and Night of the Comet especially is a favorite of mine, and Weekend at Bernie's. And you've got a background in music and dance and stuff like that. So if you had to choose one of those three films, The Last Starfighter, Night of the Comet, or Weekend at Bernie's, to turn into a Broadway musical, which do you think would be the best one?
Interesting. Well, The Last Starfighter was turned into a musical.
Oh,
it had this short, it's so bizarre because I think it was like 1994 or 95 or something. And I had just moved to New York from LA. I didn't know anything about it, but I have all these photos of I don't know how I got the photos, but of the stage production from The Last Starfighter.
That's amazing.
I know, it's amazing, and it was a musical, so that's pretty funny. I mean, I think it'd be a great musical, The Last Starfighter. Weekend at Bernie's, I don't know how you could make that into a musical.
That was
Um,
honestly the genesis of the idea for the question, because I just thought it would be funny to see the Bernie on
oh
stage
my
somehow
gosh.
being acted out in real time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess so. Oh boy, they make anything into a musical these days, it seems like. One of the great parts about Weekend at Bernie's and Terry Kaiser's performance was that expression on his face. I mean, I always say the sign of a great actor is someone who can draw your attention dead. You know,
Yeah.
he's dead through most of the thing, and you just can't take your eyes off him. That's pretty impressive, I have to say. So the first thing that popped into my mind when you said Weekend at Bernie's as a musical was, yeah, but you wouldn't capture the essence of Bernie the way you do on film. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
It could be
As funny
funny,
as it
I
would
guess.
be, it's just it wouldn't.
Yeah, I can.
You're
I
right.
Yeah, I can see The Last Starfighter mostly. Also, it's easy for me to say that because it was done. But
Right.
Night of the Comet, maybe. Yeah, that'd be sort of funny. Probably
Mhm,
focus more
mhm.
on the girls' relationship or something. I don't know. It's because on stage it really is unapologetically about the characters. You can't really sort of supplement the story with special effects and things like that
Right.
very easily. So it's got to have a very grounded storyline, character driven kind of a story.
I think Night of the Comet could have some really good sort of spooky musical songs, like almost like a Little Shop of Horrors type thing or something. It's got,
Yeah.
the subject matter is such that I think you could write some fun songs for it. Now, whether it would translate well as an actual musical on stage, I don't know. I think I'm inclined to agree, and it's cool to know that Last Starfighter actually was made into one. So
I
I have to
know.
look into that.
Well, Mo, you'll have to just write us a musical, Night of the Comet
You
musical.
you need to
That's it.
do that, Mo.
I'm
I
in.
might do
Oh
it.
You
man,
need
That's
to
your
do
next
that.
assignment.
Ooh.
I will take this and run with it.
Yeah, why not?
Your comments on Weekend at Bernie's and expressions plays very nicely into a question I was going to ask. So I'm going to skip ahead and I go back to Don. But when I watched that, one of the things that I felt was remarkable about your performance in that was the expressions that you made on your face. Like in given scenes, they actually seemed to add to the comedy of what was happening at the time. And I don't know, I just wanted to know, did you like practice those expressions to try to get the most comic effect out of it? Because I mean, I'm thinking about, Richard trying to talk to you at the copier machine in the office, and you turn around with a smile on your face, and he's like, "My aunt is very sick," and then
Yeah.
you're just like, it was perfect for the situation. I was just curious if that was done intentionally, and if you worked on that.
Uh, I no, I didn't. I think I was reacting to the situation as much as possible. It's hard to. I think it's. I don't think you can practice reactions because then they won't look like reactions. They won't look like real
I gotcha.
reactions.
Won't be
Yeah,
genuine.
it won't be genuine, right?
Mhm.
It's as opposed to like Grig in The Last Starfighter down at Hurley. He just had rubber on his face. So in order, again, sign of a great actor is making a rubber face look interesting. Apparently, and it's funny because the only time I worked with him was when they landed in the trailer park. But apparently he really worked on the subtle little expressions that he could create under, half an inch of rubber, which again, sign of a great actor. You could see it in his eyes,
Yeah.
just subtle reactions in his mouth and some body motion, the physicality that he put into that character behind all those prosthetics is incredible.
Yeah, the way he would laugh with the mask on, like, brings it to life,
Right. And when, even when he was sad, he'd have these little lizardy kind of things. And if you notice some of the the motions that he would do, or he was trying to kind of portray just something that might be lizardy, lizard-esque.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that in that case, you kind of have to really work on it to make it look so that the audience has empathy for this rubber covered character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when it's just your face, you just have to kind of react as naturally as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And that was so much fun for me because I mean, I think that I have a fairly sort of, I'm very animated in general in my life. So it was fun to be able to bring some of that out, I think, in Weekend at Bernie's.
It was cool.
It
was amazing.
I felt you could have taken a comedy direction with film, and I'm a little surprised that you really didn't. Did you ever consider it or pursue more roles like that?
Yeah, one of the reasons I wanted to do Weekend at Bernie's was because it was a comedy, because I'd sort of been, as the girlfriend and the last Starfighter, and roles. Most of the roles that I've done, I'm sort of the girl next door.
Mhm.
That was the reason I took Night of the Comet. I mean,
Mhm.
Reg is more who I am actually than kind of what you might just automatically look at me and say, oh, all American Girl Next Door person. So it's been really fun doing different roles. Comedy's very intimidating. I would love to do more comedy, but I find it very intimidating. I remember I auditioned for Friends, and I swear it was one of the best scripts I'd ever read. I just thought, oh, this is really good. I would love, and of course, if you go into an audition going, I really want this job, you'll probably fall on your face anyway. But I remember, and it may have been out of just me desperately trying to be super funny or something, because I loved the script so much. The response, I think, from the casting person was, yeah, she's not that funny. But like, and when somebody says that, a casting person, you sort of, it's hard to forget that. So I'm very intimidated by comedy.
Mhm. Mhm.
But
I can see that.
I would love to be able to do that. I would love to, because it's comedy's tricky. It's like what you were saying about practicing your reactions and things like that. If you sort of have this preconceived idea of how you should react in certain situations, it's not going to be funny.
Right. You sit there
Comedy
and
has,
practice the facial expressions. You end up coming out there Jim carrying it or something, and your face looks like rubber,
yeah, I mean, it has to be honest. Your reaction
Right.
has to be honest. That's what the comedy is, in the writing, not in the acting.
That's
I
true.
agree with that. Absolutely.
Mhm.
So now we got to move on to Night of the Comet because you brought it up.
Mhm.
So, and you being on Days of Our Lives, which is funny because my mom watched that show religiously. So I was like, Kayla Brady. Okay.
That's correct.
Awesome. So you being on there, so I know like it was in the same, I think it was 1 year after you did Night of the Comet in 1980, kind of like 83/84 was kind of, I guess, how that went. So
when I was on Days.
you were already gone from Days when you did
Oh,
Night
I
of the
was
Comet,
already
right?
gone. Yeah, yeah. I when I got the last Starfighter, I was still on Days of Our Lives, so that overlapped a little bit. So yeah. So I
did
was
that,
off by
so
Night
I
of the Comet.
guess you being on there, so did that help you any more or any less on Night of the Comet, or did it have any kind of effect on you being on Days? Did it really help at all since you'd already done Last Starfighter?
How does Days come into all this?
I was just wondering because it was like you were, being a soap opera and then going into movies.
Oh, I see.
Is the transition any harder, any easier?
Well, Days of Our Lives, doing a soap opera, just have to say, is one of the hardest acting jobs ever, because you look at a movie that's an hour and a half, 2 hours long. It takes a month or two to shoot. In a soap opera, Days of Our Lives was an hour long. You had to shoot it in a day. So if you just take that into consideration, especially if so there's lots and lots of characters and lots of storylines, things going on. But if you have like a heavy storyline, and if you're shooting an hour show, which is around 110 pages, say, or 100 pages, whatever, you might have 50 pages of dialogue to memorize in a day. And that's really hard.
That's brutal.
Sounds nerve-wracking.
Really,
That is
as
brutal.
hell.
I was on it for 2 years and I never got used to it. I found it very, very difficult. I think people who have been on a soap opera for years and years and years can almost predict what it is they're going to say, I guess. But for me, it was very difficult. So going back into movies was like,
Yeah, can actually breathe here, you know.
Yeah, you can breathe, and you get to be on location, and it's just a whole different. It's soap operas are machines. They're just machines, just pounding out these things, and the most important thing is that you get the words out. And I so admire soap opera actors who really create these really multi-dimensional, interesting characters within the confines of a soap opera. Because even the writing, there's sort of a way that writers write soap operas, which is to kind of repeat things over and over and over again, names, situations, so that anybody that might have missed an episode or two comes back and it's just all falls back into place. So it's not the most interesting dialogue. It's like a system that they have. And with a movie, or even a TV show, it's like telling a unique, interesting story each time. So I found doing Days of Our Lives very difficult. I mean, it does sort of, I guess, it forces you into some sort of discipline, but you don't, it's a different kind of acting as well. So it's not like, oh, thank goodness I had 2 years on a soap opera so that I could do a movie. It's, you know what I mean? It's such a different, it's almost like being a theater actor and then being thrown onto the set of a movie. They're completely different.
Yeah, really.
It's a different relationship with the audience, on the set, it's through a camera. On stage, it's there. So you have to learn to adjust to the medium, really, that you're dealing with at the time. Even television is a little bit different. And then there's different kinds of television, 3 camera and all that, sitcoms and stuff.
Right.
So
I'm impressed that you did that for 2 years. Like you'd have me for about 2 hours, and you know what, guys, I can't do this. I gotta go. 50 pages a day, and then new pages each day. I don't think so.
You'd have me at the 50 pages. I'd probably eat whatever yogurt was in the trailer and just bounce without telling anybody anything.
Yeah. Just walk off stage. Give me a sandwich and I'm going.
He's just not here anymore.
Can't do this anymore.
Where's Kayla? Yeah. It was hard. So but like I said, I so admire the actors that have it figured all out, man. Good for them.
Gotcha.
So like Nadia, the comment, you had mentioned that you had still continued to pursue dance, like even when your acting career started. I was curious how long you continued to pursue dance, and I assume that you were still doing that when Night of the Comet was happening. Did that help you with some of the physical things that you needed to do for the role, like, I don't know, fight scene choreography and things like that?
Yeah.
I assume it would, right?
I think so. I mean, I wasn't pursuing dance professionally or like going to class every single day, but I was still taking class every once in a while because it's my foundation, and I love it to this day. But for sure, the physicality of some of the stuff that I had to do at Night of the Comet, absolutely, it helped being a dancer. I loved all that stuff. I loved that fight scene in the alley with the zombie. That was one of my favorite scenes, just
one of the best
because
scenes.
I got to do that.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. And that guy, that zombie was a stunt guy, so I felt perfectly safe. he knew what he was doing. I didn't feel like I could hurt him, because
Right.
he was really worried about me hurting him,
Yep.
or him hurting me. So no, I absolutely, there's been, different times in different projects that my dance background is, I sort of, if it wasn't a part of it already, I might inject a little bit. But I also feel like dancing, speaking of something that's very, it's very regimented. It takes a lot of discipline, a lot of physical discipline. I worked, like I said, in a company for a few years in Canada, and just as a group in a dance, being perfectly in sync. We just did it over and over and over and over. My mentor and our instructor and teacher, she insisted on perfection. I loved it in that particular situation. I love dance, but it really, there's not much that feels overwhelming. The acting was a different, like on Days of Our Lives, that's different because it's a different kind of physicality and mentality. But the dance background gave me the kind of discipline where I have a lot of stamina. I can put up with a lot of stuff, man. Nothing really bothers me much in terms of how long the hours are, or even criticism and direction. All that stuff it's nothing to me. It's a part of what it's all about.
You could liken it to like martial arts almost, like you have the physical
Absolutely.
conditioning and the discipline and the ability to learn how to move your body in a specific way that makes learning fight choreography probably easier to do.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, for sure. It's the same sort of thing. That's all the very specific moves for the end result. It's paramount for in dance or in that, what you're talking about. It really gave me a terrific foundation for just discipline and stamina and patience. And also when as a dancer, it's about the group. It's not about you. That's something that some actors can kind of drift away from, the idea that it's not just all about you. And the difference is the end result is you see the big face of this one person on screen and everybody goes, oh, they're wonderful. But in the background, there's hundreds of people working their ass off to make you look good, or make that happen, make that scenario happen, whatever it is. And I think sometimes actors can forget that it's not just all about them because of all the accolades they get and all the attention they get. But that's a very, very important thing to remember when you're working as an actor. You're just the one in front of the camera. It's all the other people that are making that happen, and they are just, if they weren't there, you wouldn't be there. So they're just as important as you are. From the grip, from the PA who's knocking on your door trying to get you onto the set so that they can get the movie, shot, to the director, to the producer. They're all as, if not more important than you are as an actor.
A lot of cogs to make the machine work.
Oh boy, yes.
I want to pull Mo back in here because I think we missed a chance to grab one of his questions when the subject of The Outsiders came up. You want to throw that one in there, Mo?
I do, actually. I'm very curious about this one. So you auditioned, according to IMDb, for the role of Cherry Valance in The Outsiders. Favorite book, favorite movie for a lot of people, myself included. So I was curious if there was a character from a novel that you would have loved the opportunity, or would love the opportunity to play, were it to be adapted into a film.
Oh, very interesting question. I have a couple of books that, well, I have to go, hold on, back here.
All right.
Nobody's ever heard of, that I would love to somehow turn into like a movie or like a mini series or something like that? Do you like my little?
I do like that.
I was gonna comment
a
on, like,
nice
if I
chair.
did that, I would smash like 15 things off here. She just does it so elegantly.
It's that
I've got some
dancing
room
background
in
there.
here. That's
Yeah,
my
yeah.
dance background. Yeah, I could.
It was very elegant.
Oh. Okay, so these are books that that you won't know, but this one is called The School Marm Tree, which is something. It's this this story that takes place in like turn of the century Canada, believe it or not, which is fascinating to me because whoever thinks about what was going on in the Rocky Mountains of Canada at the turn of the century?
Well,
Nobody.
I do fairly frequently, but sounds interesting though.
No, it's about this woman who lives this amazing life in Jasper, Alberta, and it's a simple story, but the character's so interesting, and the experiences that she has in this small town that a train rolls through every once in a while, and she hopes to meet this new person, and she'll meet new people, and she's wondering what. I just find it a fascinating book. I would love to create this into a movie someday and play that lead character.
A delightful little slice of life period piece thing that I'm gonna look into reading that.
Yeah, good luck finding it. I've had it for years and years. It's sort of, there's a little Western edge to it, there's but there's also like this hiking into the mountain sequence. I mean, it's just, I find it fascinating, and it really taps into sort of my background because I grew up in that area. Edmonton is sort of on the edge of the Rockies, and we spent, summers in Jasper, Alberta, and Banff and all those places. I mean, they were my back door basically. So that's something. And then this isn't really answering your question because frankly, by the time, if this ever would get made, I'd be way too old. But and I'm trying to think back, is there a novel? But these have always been kind of thoughts. There's another one that's this is another Canadian one, believe it or not. That's this epic generational thing. It's called Fall on Your Knees. But it's this really fascinating story. Again, it's the East Coast of Canada, turn of the century, about just generations of these characters and how they survived and just everything that they've been through. And that doesn't, like I said, that doesn't really answer your question, but my focus right now is trying to create projects and direct and produce.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Yeah. I have one. What's that?
Oh, I said, there you go. I mean, if you don't feel like you could be in it now, you could just direct it, and that would be awesome.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to do that. One of the things I always feel like was also a plus in terms of dance is I have a real sense of space and choreography and vision. Dance, of course, is very, very visual. And I feel like I could, that's something I really would love to pursue, is creating a project and having the vision for it in its entirety. I have been working on one right now that has been optioned with a production company. I seem to be going back to Canada. It's so funny because I never really worked in Canada as an actor. And now as time goes on, just because I'm Canadian, I'm actually a dual citizen, but because I'm Canadian, it's like, and there's a huge industry now up in Canada, of course. Mm-hmm. I seem to, things are sort of moving north for me somehow, which is ironic again, sort
That's
of.
awesome.
To me.
Mm-hmm. Back to the roots.
Yeah, back to the roots, eh? Yeah, so there's a project that I co-wrote that's been optioned by a production company up in Canada, and we're just getting the promotional materials out there. There's some interest with the company in Vancouver, and this would be something that I not only would act in but direct.
Very exciting.
And I've sort of created from its inception, so I know these characters very, very well. And it's also a little labor of love because it takes place on the west coast of British Columbia, where my parents retired, and I just love this area so much. So hopefully that will come to fruition.
And you just answered one of my questions.
Yep.
I knew that you were working on some script writing, and I was wondering how that was going. So thank you very much. Now I don't have
You're
to ask
welcome. Yeah. I wrote this. This all, well, it sort of started this whole script writing thing. When I think I was 12, when I had this idea of a story. When I was a little girl, I loved horses. Of course, what girl doesn't? It seems like every little girl loves horses. And so I created this story about a girl and a horse. And flash forward to like 2012 or something, I decided I'm going to write this stupid script, or 2000 something. And so I literally spent a couple of months writing a script, and I finished it. I mean, it was pretty bad because it's the first script I've ever done. So I've had to do lots and lots of editing and things like that, as you do anyway with any script that you write. But that was my first sort of foray into script writing. But it was such a feeling of accomplishment when I finished this thing. Holy moly!
Bet.
So that's another one that I want to. That's sort of on the back burner at the moment because of this other one that's gotten a lot more attention. But I'd like to sort of move forward with that as well.
Well, yeah, thank you for answering my question too, man. Those books sound delightful. I'm sure I've got to be able to find them in some digital format at least, or something.
Maybe.
If I can't find them physically.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna look into it.
Good.
Looks like, the next one here looks like it's mine as well. I mean, do you ever just like casually watch your own movies? And if so, which is probably the movie that you revisit the most often, just as a viewer,
I don't.
There you go. Understandable.
Yeah. I'm some actors want to sit there and watch themselves and whatever. It's very hard for me to watch myself, especially like for the first, like in a project that I've just done. I don't want anybody else around, and because you're so self-critical. And probably the one I've watched the most is probably The Last Starfighter, and probably Night of the Comet, because those are the ones that I kind of feel like I have to remind myself of what exactly happened in all those, and probably The Apple, because I get so many questions about those movies. So yeah, I have to kind of look, it's sort of research for me, because it was quite a while ago that I did those. Yeah, so whatever I do, I eventually watch them just to see what they're all about, but it's not very easy for me to. I mean, it's fun to watch Weekend at Bernie's, but I'm not in it too much, but it's such a departure from who I really am in a way, and it's such a funny movie that you're sort of distracted with the idea that you're actually in it. So
yeah, I can understand that. So that would be like the one you might throw on just for laughs, because the movie itself is fun. Geez, my cat's getting crazy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you speaking of not being in stuff very much, I did watch several movies leading up to this that I wanted to get a better sampling than just the things that you're so used to talking about. I mean, like The Attic, Imitation Girl, which if I was going to complain about anything about The Imitation Girl, it's just that you weren't in it very much. Just a couple of short scenes, and I was like, well, yeah, she was in it.
What was fun about that was, well, first of all, they were my friends that were making that movie, but also, again, a completely different kind of character, so for me, it doesn't really, I don't really care about the size of the role as much as I care about just trying different stuff and exploring different characters. I mean, I come from a very academic family, so that to me, she was an academic in a way, and I like kind of playing that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. And that would make sense because when I watched Reaper, I mean, that was a very different role, I felt, for you, because you were playing like a police detective in that, trying to figure out a couple of murders. And I don't think I'd ever seen you do that before.
Yeah,
Is it another
well,
one of
that's
those experiences?
yeah, I mean, that's what's so fun about this business. I mean, for me, it's always sometimes actors will never talk about it being fun, but they'll have all sorts of other ways of expressing their joy for acting. But for me, it's just joy. I just really, I translate the joy of acting into really having a lot of fun and reveling in the moment, kind of a thing. Um, yeah, I don't get very intellectual about it necessarily. I mean, I do, of course, when I'm working on the character. It's not easy to act, but one of the things that's the most fun for me is exploring all these different kinds of characters. And there's always a little bit of you in each character that you play. But then it's also exploring maybe something that's a little uncomfortable or different or whatever. That's what's so interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You've had very diverse roles, in very different movies, so I can totally see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm going to skip a couple of things that I was going to talk about, just in the interest of respecting your time, so that these guys get more of a chance to talk. But I did want to ask, in your long career, what is one thing that you would say has really changed about, the film industry, and one thing that has basically stayed the same?
Well, I mean, for me, the hardest thing in terms of how the industry has changed is the pandemic. It really screwed everything up. Not just the fact that it stopped everything, but then everything is done remotely, including auditioning. And I don't like that at all. I do not like putting myself on tape for an audition. I want to be in the room with the people that are going to be involved with making the movie or the TV show or whatever it is. I want to be able to have a one-on-one with them. I want them to get to know me. I want to get to know them. I want to know what it is they want. Right now, if you audition for something, you take your phone or you go to some place and you have the sides, the scene that they want you to read, and you hold the thing there and you say the words and then you send it to them. And I hate that with a passion. It's just horrible to me. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's okay. Some people like it. I was talking to a young actor who, she was like, I love it because I can do it until I feel like it's right. And I'm like, yeah, but what about the people that are, auditioning you, or what about their vision? I hate it. I so
I get what you're saying.
can't tell you. And also that you'll sometimes you'll get an audition that's like 3 or 4 scenes, and you have to prepare all this stuff. You have to memorize the words, and then you send it in, and that they're just gonna look at it takes hours and hours and hours. And then in my case, I go to a space where they videotape me and then they edit it and they send it themselves. But so it costs me money now to audition. It costs me to audition for people. And
Right.
they're going to look at it, and within, I don't know, 30 seconds, they're just going to go, because you don't look right or something like that.
Right.
I hate it.
That sounds terrible.
But some people are fine with it, especially younger actors who don't know any different. But I used to love auditioning. I used to love going in and meeting these creative people and having a conversation. And I just noticed the Night of the Comet poster on your wall there. Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I got Night of the Comet, Last Starfighter Blu-rays behind me. So
oh my gosh, I didn't see the Last Starfighter. Your head must be in the way.
I was prepared.
You are. I love that. What's the same, I guess? I mean, so many things have changed because it's a digital age now, and it's so much easier to make movies, and they make movies much faster than they used to. And more people have access to making movies, which can be good and bad. So, you'll have somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing will make a movie, and um, which is fine. It's fine, but it's hard to get. It's really hard to make a living acting now, unless you either make a whole bunch of money or you make barely enough to get by. And that's tough, because movies are made for such little money, and our union has these contracts that are like, I don't know, you can be paid less than a crew guy who doesn't do a lot of stuff. It's frustrating. So that's different. But ultimately, yeah, I was going to say, back in the day, you really had to earn your way to to your position. Sure. Now it's like, people are just, you're doing it, so there's not the formality there used to be, I guess, for a lot of things. I mean, maybe for bigger studio projects there is, which leads me to the kinds of movies that, especially in the American market, that they make these days, that are so, it's more of a business. It's more about making money and then sort of piggybacking off the last thing that made the most money. And those tend to be what we were talking about earlier, all the special effects. And that seems to be what makes a lot of money. But I also feel like that's not giving the audience, it's not giving them the chance to enjoy movies the way we used to. And I also think that's what makes things like The Last Starfighter and Night of the Comet have the longevity that they have, because people watch these movies, and the charm and the relatability and the characters, it draws you in. It's not just, throwing you back against the, but what's the same is kind of the joy of filmmaking for most people. I mean, it's very special, it's unique. It's a collaboration. It's a bunch of like-minded people really working hard to do the best that they can, have the best product, present the best product that they can. You have being an actor is a very unique thing. You have to, there's so much rejection, even back in the day when, you had to go in and meet in person and things like that. You have to be a unique kind of person and do it because you love it. I mean, and because it's hard. It's a hard job even once you get the job to do it well, and it's hard getting a job. So that never changes.
Thank you very much.
That was a good one. That was a great answer. Wow. I guess I can say I don't envy you guys if it's that hard, because man, that would suck with the rejection. Shoo.
It's all about rejection.
So speaking,
it's a good thing you take it well.
It's really, so it's funny that you say that with the whole, you don't like doing the auditions over the phone. So I have an ear for voices. And one thing that I picked up on was you were in Red Dead Redemption 2. So you got to work with Rockstar with one of the biggest games to ever come out, which was, incredible, generational without a doubt. And you played, Moira. So would you say would you ever really do voice acting once you were done, being on screen? Would that be something you wanted to do? Would you want to pursue it, or would you still want to just, I don't want to do the voice acting, I want to be on the big screen? So I was just curious about that, because you did a phenomenal job in that game, without a doubt.
Oh, thank you. I don't think I've ever seen it, actually. I know I'm in there somewhere, but with those games, it's like, depends on which way you go with the story, right? To see if these characters show up. That was a very interesting experience too, but absolutely, in terms of voice acting, I have done a little bit of voice acting, but it is something that I've pursued to a certain degree. I have an agent. I have auditions every once in a while for voice acting. I haven't really broken into it, you know. But what's so nice about that is you could just kind of go in your pajamas and talk into a microphone. You know, obviously you have to, again, it's a very sort of defined creative, you know, job. You have it's not easy, and I think you have to learn how to do it properly. But absolutely, I would love to do voice stuff, because, you know, I remember it's telling stories, but you have to tell them with your voice and make it interesting for the audience to draw them in without being able to even see you. So that's another kind of challenging acting that I would love to do. I used to love reading my kids stories at night. And I used to get teased. My husband would tease me because I would get really into the characters and all the other stuff, but it was fun for me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So yeah, I would love to do voice acting, more of it.
Awesome.
That seems like it would be a good way to provide some opportunities to play some really whacked out characters you might not be able to play like physically on screen, but being able to just do voices and say crazy lines seems like it would be fun to do, especially after, you know.
Yeah, that would be super
Right.
fun.
Well,
That would be super fun.
you've got a voice for it. I mean, when we were talking about that silly Australia stuff before we started recording, I mean, it was making me smile just hearing you say things like emu, you know. So if you get killed by an emu, that would be stupid. Like, that would be fun to hear come out of like an animated character.
No doubt, no doubt.
Yeah, how would you justify that is what I want to know. Yeah, I mean, it would be fun. It's funny because that year that we were in Australia, we also traveled to lots of different places, following my dad doing his work. And wherever I went, I think I was just trying to fit in. I would take on the accent of the place. I had a really good year. I had a good year apparently when I was a kid musically as well. I could, if somebody played something on the piano, I would know what the notes were and things like that. So yeah, I think I'm not sure that I'm as good at it anymore, but as a kid, I remember people like commenting on the fact that I had a really good ear for accents and music and things like that. When I try to imitate, you know, I'm not going to do it, so don't ask me. But
Oh,
like
man.
in when I try to, you know, speak in French or something like that, people always say, even now, that I have a pretty good accent. I wouldn't know at all, but so anyway, I think I have a pretty good ear, but we'll see. Maybe one day I'll break into the voiceover business.
We look forward to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mo, you got one
Weekend at
more in the
Bernie's
chamber?
animated series.
Yeah, the animated
I
series.
do. So it's you know, of all the productions you've been a part of, is there one that you kind of look at as, you know, the one you had the most fun with, the one that you look at it still and think like, that's a great example of why I love doing what I do, you know? Just one that kind of, you know, maybe even during sometimes when you're on a production that isn't going so well, maybe you think back, it's like, oh, they can't all be, you know, this one, you know, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I like to say that with each experience, it's unique and interesting and challenging all at the same time. Some are better than others, I guess. Sometimes you get along better with actors than other actors. Some actors can be just really not nice people, which always astounds me. It's like, do you understand the business that you're in and how lucky you are? I mean, how do you justify being a jerk, really? But I, you know, I'm just grateful when I'm on a set, and I try to enjoy it and absorb it in the most positive way I can. But probably, and this is going to not sound too surprising, I suppose, but probably the experience that I look back on the most fondly, if that's correct, to say, is The Last Starfighter. It was the first movie that I did after I'd arrived in Los Angeles. And it truly was, and this sounds cliche, but it truly was, it felt like a labor of love. Nick Castle, the director, he hadn't done a lot of stuff, but he obviously really liked young people. I mean, he was just so kind and generous and patient. Everybody involved with that movie was sort of youthful, if not in age and attitude. And it just felt like such a positive experience all the time. And I think that comes across in the movie. I think you feel
It really does.
that kind of,
yeah,
that
it
sort
feels
of
like
joy.
it was a blast to be on. Yeah.
It was. And like I said, I'm still really good friends with Lance. I mean, that says something. I'm still really good friends with Kelly.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I did a movie called Mischief, which was also a lot of fun. After Night of the Comet, it was set in the 50s. Kelly Preston was in it, who's no longer with us, sadly. But that was another really super fun experience. And what was I going to say? I had something very specific to say about that. Oh shoot. Darn it, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, I mean, it was just sort of those sort of experiences. Oh, I know what I was going to say is that I'm still really good friends with Doug McKeon, who was on Golden Pond, and Chris Nash, who played sort of my love interest in it. That says something about the movie.
Oh yeah, because I
Definitely.
mean, I imagine there's tons of people you've worked with too that you just never talk to again. So the fact that you're still friends all these years later is pretty great.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's like you live in this little universe for this very concentrated bubble for however long it takes you to shoot a movie. And then everybody, it's like it bursts and everybody goes off to their real lives, and sometimes those paths don't cross again. So it's really nice. I really love the fact that I've been able to keep in touch with different people and seen how their lives have unfolded, and yeah, it's really fun.
That sounds wonderful.
It does.
Mhm.
Don, you got anything else before I let her go about her day?
I was going to ask if she was obsessed
Well-
with horses, but I don't have to because I know she is. So obviously, she already said that earlier.
I am. I love them.
So
Still do.
one thing that I did see, which is kind of corny, is I saw one of your favorite quotes, which was, "We are all a little broken, but the last time I checked, broken crayons still color," and that was from Trent Shelton. So I was wondering what significance that had, because it's a great quote without a doubt. So I was just curious about that because I saw it. I was like, that is a really good quote. So enlighten me.
That's funny because I where did you read that? It is a fantastic quote, but I don't remember saying it.
That's just me doing my research. It's horrible. I know it's.
Oh no,
That's just
you
how I
know
do
where
it.
you read that?
I
mean,
think it
that's a
was
great quote.
I think it might have been an IMDb on something. One of your movies had it, and was getting a little deeper. But I guess I can ask too. Speaking, son and daughter Connor and Hannah, have they got into acting? Have they, either been in a movie with you, been in a project without you? Would they want to do that?
Well, my daughter Hannah, actually, one of her majors in college was theater, and she's also got an incredible singing voice. So she did some musical theater as well. But when she graduated, she was with a theater company, a little theater company here in New York for a while. They would create these original plays, and I was in a couple of them actually, which was super fun for me. But she's kind of drifted away from that. She's more interested in kind of education and environment and that kind of thing. She's kind of drifted more in that direction. Connor never really got into acting, although he did some in high school. And honestly, I thought he was terrific, but it just wasn't something that he wanted to pursue. I think he's a little too self-conscious in a way. But I really thought he had some talent there. I don't regret the fact that they're not pursuing it, because like I said, it's a very difficult business, and not that they couldn't do it and be successful, but they're really both doing things that they really love. Connor got his master's in urban planning and is now working for a councilman here in New York. And he's like director of urban planning, and he's what, 25?
That's
He's
awesome.
young.
That's awesome.
That's wild. He's like building cities.
He loves it. He's it's almost like trying to keep the city from overbuilding. He's
All right, I hadn't thought of that.
a very empathetic person. He's like, his other choice before he got this job was working for a nonprofit. So he's on the ground, trying to make a difference, which is wonderful. It's very progressive. So they didn't, neither one of them went in the direction that I did, but I mean, you get us all in a room and it can get pretty loud and funny.
It sounds to me like you have a lot to feel blessed about and be very proud of.
Sure.
Absolutely.
I absolutely am so grateful for everything. I mean, I really try to really focus on the positive and what an incredible journey my life has been so far. And I look and all the new things that I'm looking forward to, and just be grateful every day.
Mhm. Well, we are grateful for the entertainment you've given us.
Absolutely.
And we're very grateful that you've stopped by to talk to us. I wanted to take it out with, I know you have a new movie coming out at some point, the Elevator Game. I plan to check that out as soon as I can find it somewhere. But I'd like to give everybody who comes on as a guest a chance to talk about the things that they're passionate about. If you got any passion projects you're working on, charities you'd like to shout out, or even just to let people know where they can go to find information about you and stay connected to what you're doing. Anything you want to talk about? The floor is yours.
Well, I think we covered a lot of that somehow.
We did.
But I mean, IMDb, people can see all the work that I've been in my entire career, basically. That's a great reference place. I'm on Facebook, which is, I know it's sort of obsolete now, but I'm old. So under Catherine Mary Stewart. I'm on Instagram, Catherine Mary Stewart. I'm on Twitter. Cameo, there's a thing called cameo.com where you can call in and get a personalized video from me, which is so much fun to do. I love it. So I'm involved. Like I was talking about earlier, this project that I've been working on, that I co-wrote and will direct. It's really gaining some momentum now. So I also try to keep in touch, just keep everybody up to date with what's going on with me. I sort of utilize Facebook mostly because I'm so familiar with that. I'm trying to get more into Instagram and try to figure out how to put more than just photos out there.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way. I'm like, I don't know how this works.
I don't either. I haven't figured. I just learned to do one of those like video. Well, they're not even videos. They're like one photo after another.
Stories.
And add music, stories. I just learned to do that, and I think I screwed that up too. But I'll work on it. So that if there was a charity that I would be, close to, my mother struggled with Alzheimer's for about a decade before she passed away, and so that's important to me. There's lots going on in the world that is very concerning, but I really think, follow your heart out there and try to give as much as you can. If not financially, then put yourself out there to help whoever is in need.
I agree. 100%. 100%.
Well, again, thank you very much for stopping by.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks,
We had a
guys.
great time talking to you. This was
Oh my God,
awesome.
this has been amazing.
And we look forward to more projects that you have coming in the future. And maybe if things go right, Don and I'll get to see you in June at the drive-in.
Oh, I
That'd
am.
be
I already got my tickets. So whether you
He
go,
goes tickets, I gotta buy mine.
I'm there.
Oh,
yeah.
it'd be so much fun to see you guys. And then you could meet Kelly and it'll be fun. It'll be really fun.
Without a
That
doubt.
sounds awesome to me.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Well,
Guys,
we've
well, thank
absolutely had a
you.
blast.
Oh,
Yes.
thank
Me
you so
too.
much. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
It's fun.
Yep. Take care.
Take care.
Bye
Much
bye.
love.
Bye for now.
Bye.
You too.